Well, we can speak now to Ian Kelly. He's a former US ambassador both to the Eastern Republic of Georgia and also to the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which is one of the few organisations in which pretty much every European country is a member, not least Russia. Ambassador, thank you so much for being with us on BBC News. I wanted to ask you, first of all, about your response to the announcement from President Putin of putting his nuclear weapons on special alert. Do you regard this as further brinkmanship?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Obviously, that's a very concerning thing when the Russian president says, in response to aggressive statements, they are raising their nuclear preparedness. I see it as a sign that Putin is feeling the bite of the sanctions. Sanctions are proliferating virally, especially in Europe, and he's afraid. So I think this is an attempt really to try and deter the West from doing further measures to take down the Russian economy.
Just on that question of sanctions, there have been some grumbles in Washington last week, not least in the US Congress, some sense that perhaps Europe wasn't going far enough and fast enough. Do you think the latest announcements, in particular from the European Union, might please people in Washington in that regard?
Well, I know it pleases me, and I'm pretty sure it pleases my former colleagues in Washington. I think particularly the statements of the German Chancellor about changing their policy about sending arms to Ukraine. I think that was a tremendous move. Banning Russian flights from European airspace. In many ways, Europe is ahead of us in some of these moves.
You're as worried in the United States as people are in other parts of the world about inflation. And I wonder what your sense is of US public opinion at the moment. Do you think it is kind of on side over all of this? Because for many in the United States, it's true in Europe, it was even more so in the United States, Ukraine is very far away and any conflict in Europe is not of immediate daily concern.
Well, I think with the exception of some outliers in the Republican Party, I think that in terms of messaging from the leadership, political leadership of both parties, it has been very forward-leaning in terms of imposing costs on Russia for its invasion. Of course, the economy in the United States is fragile. Because of the pandemic, it's fragile because of inflation and because of supply chain problems. But I think that right now, I don't see any problems, political problems, with both the administration and Congress moving forward with even more tough sanctions.
Now, you have a background in the Slavic languages. You therefore, and obviously have spent a lot of time in Central and Eastern Europe. What's your perspective on the kind of relationship between some of those countries that are not NATO members, like Georgia, where you serve, like Ukraine, with Russia under Putin, and where it will stand now as a result of this invasion?
Well, that's an excellent question. And since my last post, of course, was Georgia, of course, I'm very concerned about knock-on effects to Georgia, to its security, to its economic growth. And I think one thing that I'm really concerned about is one of the results of this aggression, I think, is a tendency for countries around Russia that don't have the protection of NATO, and of course, Georgia is one of those, to try and keep their heads down and not provoke Putin even further. And I think that has a real retarding effect on the development of democracy in the periphery of Russia.
I was very struck finally by, you obviously served with Secretary Clinton, and she famously, on then President Obama's hopes of a reset, spent time in Moscow, spent time talking to Putin. And her response in her memoirs is that strength and resolve are the only language that Putin would understand. Do you think that remains the case is it even more so the case now than when she wrote those words, 7 years ago?
It's even more so. And I think the real kind of paradigm shift is the European nations have begun to realize this too, that we can no longer give Putin the benefit of the doubt. We can't coddle him. Firmness and resolve are the only way to counter his expansionism and his aggression.
Ambassador Ian Kelly, thank you very much for being with us and for joining us on BBC News. We're grateful for your insight.
Thank you.